Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Margot Abord de Chatillon. I am a PhD researcher at the University of Lyon in France at the Lietz laboratory. And I would like to tell you today about a new French COVID policy called the coup de pouce vélo and how it impacted the bicycle repair ecosystem. I will first tell you how this policy, this subsidy works, and then I will dwell on the impact of the policy on cyclists and on bicycle shops. And then I will dig further and look at community workshops and how their specific case was impacted by this subsidy. So what is the coup de pouce vélo? So this is the first French public policy that is directly targeting bicycle repair and specifically targeting bicycle repair. It is part of a pack of COVID-related measures that was released, part of which is a subsidy for bicycle parking or a subsidy for bicycle lessons. And this coup de pouce vélo consists in a €50 subsidy on bicycle repair and maintenance. It is funded by an eco-tax on polluting firms, which are displayed here below. And the program has a set time, which is between May 11th. It started on the first day France got out of lockdown, and it is supposed to run until December 31st. When this was released, the French Minister of Transport declared that she hoped that this time could be a new step in bicycle culture and that the bicycle could be the queen of this time when we are coming out of lockdown. So this is part of a big statement that bicycle is seen as some sort of answer to the health crisis somehow. How does the coup de pouce vélo work? So the coup de pouce in French means a little help, and it's like a little kick of the thumb to push you further and to help you go ahead. So bicycle shops and community workshops join the platform and they are displayed on the map. Here you can see the map of the Lyon area, and in blue it's non-for-profit organizations, and in orange it's bicycle shops. Individuals can create an account and then go to one of the shops that is displayed on the platform, and they will pay €50 less than it would be usually required on the repair that is conducted, that is realized. The repair organization uploads a receipt and then receives €50 from the government. Cyclists can use this subsidy once for each bicycle they own, so they can use it several times if they own several bicycles. Here is a little infographic. You can see in the end the cyclist riding away happily saying, "Le vélo est mon geste barrière." Riding a bicycle is protecting me from coronavirus. The first thing we can say about this scheme is that it's been very successful in the way that many people have been using it. So some people in the media have been describing it as a bicycle repair rush, like a gold rush. Over 60,000 people benefited from the scheme in the first 2 weeks. In the first 5 weeks, 175,000 repairs were realized for about €10 million already. 3,000 repair organizations registered on the platform. Now there is less of them. And the program was extended from €20 million to €60 million of funding. Very early on, they decided to extend the program. So how does this program impact cyclists? So cyclists, obviously, many of them were very excited about getting free bicycle repair. Many of them had trouble finding a mechanic who would be part of the scheme or agree to repair the bicycle for them. There were lots of waiting. What a professional mechanic told me is that with this scheme, they saw a lot of people come in who had taken their bicycle out of their sheds. And when I said, "How do you know that?" they said, because there were literal cobwebs on these bicycles. You can see very easily that they were very poorly maintained. So this is good because this is what the scheme was about initially, to help people get on their bicycles without purchasing a new one. Usually cyclists want to spend exactly the 50 euro amount so that they wouldn't have to get any money out of their pocket. This was described by mechanics as some issue since very often when a bicycle is covered with cobwebs, it also means that it needs a bit more than 50 euros of repairs. And also, this measure got some customers coming into shops aiming to get a bicycle repaired so they could sell it back afterwards. So a different kind of customers than usual, but this was a very low amount of people using this scheme. How did it impact bike shops? Bike shops were overwhelmed, according to many articles that got out in the media. A mechanic I interviewed said, now in early August, we now take bookings for end of November. This time is usually busy, but in the first 2 weeks after lockdown, we got a month and a half of new bookings at once in a couple of weeks only. So it's been very intense for bike shops, and they also got lots of paperwork to deal with this platform, even though it got simpler with time. So the same mechanic says, now it takes about 5 minutes for registering customers, while it was about 15 minutes at the start of the program. It means we can use the coup de pouce for smaller repairs than we did at first. And he also said, they promised we would get the subsidy a week after the transaction, but it actually is a month later, which is a problem if you do not have the cash flow on you to run a bicycle shop. So because it means customers do not pay for the repairs you do for them, and you only receive the money a month later. Many bike shops decided eventually to drop out of the platform. And when I asked what was the extent of the number of shops that dropped out, someone told me, well, a German journalist came to Strasbourg to do a radio series about the coup de pouce, but they could not find any bike shop that was still actively using the scheme, so they gave up. So it's a very big amount of the bike shops who used to be on this scheme that work, and I believe maybe 2/3 of bike shops stopped being part of the scheme. And the reason for that could be the following: that at first, mechanics were enthusiastic about this scheme because they were very worried about the consequences of the crisis. They're not expecting the extent to which the demand for bicycles and for repairs would increase after lockdown. The demand is so strong that they can charge anything, so they do not need the coup de pouce in the end. So we saw how the coup de pouce impacted cyclists, how it impacted bike shops, but there's another actor I would like to tell you a little bit more about. It's community workshops. And it was a very specific situation when it comes to community workshops, and I will explain why. First of all, what is a community workshop? I'm talking about the French Atelier d'auto-réparation, and there are workshops where members can come, use the tools, and use the help of a volunteer to repair their bicycle themselves. There's over 300 community workshops in France. So it's a very big thing in France. And community workshops are usually very informal. It's, some people rent a garage and have a set of tools, and anyone can come in, and then, there is a bit of a membership system that comes in. So it's one of the most informal ways of repairing a bicycle. But they organize themselves through a national network, Le Recyclage, which counts over 150 members. So the coup de pouce was initially a proposal of Le Recyclage, which wrote some kind of a report during lockdown. But it is not Le Recyclage who is right now in charge of the project. It is the Fédération des usagers de la bicyclette, another network which is more influential right now politically. So what was difficult was to integrate community workshops and their specificities into the scheme. So for instance, they do not have a tax number, which was initially required to register into the platform, but also it meant adapting the kind of uses cyclists could do with the subsidy. And the national network of community workshops, Le Recyclage, worked a lot to get recognized that some things would be part of what is subsidized by the coup de pouce. For instance, one thing that is very specific of community workshops is open donations, non-set prices. You can pay whatever you want for some of the services that workshops offer. And this is part of the inclusivity, the attempt of these workshops to be very inclusive to every kind of people with every kind of income. Similarly, second-hand parts and second-hand bicycles were included into what is subsidized by the coup de pouce, and also membership fees of the workshops were included, because bicycle shops usually do not ask for membership fees. So the Recyclage had to lobby so that this would be included as part of a repair. They also asked for the vocabulary used to be changed, and for the platform not to use only customer as a term, but also talk about members of community workshops. They also asked for bicycles to not require having anti-thieves identification or marking, which was the one initial part of the proposal, so that they could benefit from the scheme. This was because asking for this anti-thieves identification, which is being made mandatory progressively in France right now, would mean that a lot of our old second-hand bicycles would not be eligible to the scheme. So because community workshop work with older bicycles, this was a priority to them. However, despite these measures for inclusivity, some criticism were raised regarding this scheme. And the criticisms are that the scheme requires the use of a tablet or smartphone for taking geolocalized pictures of the bicycle as part of the receipt. So this is excluding for some organizations who are not in favor of some uses of the internet and of numerical means, and also that it requires a specific form of billing, of writing receipts, and also it requires for the cyclists who wants to benefit from the scheme to input their address and their phone number. Which excludes some part of the population. So how did it work for community workshops? They usually work with a very precarious economic model, which was made even more fragile by the sanitary crisis. An important part of the way bicycle community workshops work is that a cyclist works on their own bicycle with the help of a volunteer. So there is tools sharing, people get close to each other, and they're touching the same bicycle, so many issues could come out of this. Many of them had to change their usual model to disinfect tools, to put together separate sets of tools like you can see in that picture, and to reduce the amount of members who are using the space at once. And then thanks to the scheme, workshops that joined the scheme got new visitors. So some new members who had never heard of community workshops before found about community workshops through the coup de pouce platform. They got financial support, right? So it allowed them to earn more money than they usually would. And a person I interviewed said, in 2 months, we got over 500 people coming for the coup de pouce in a workshop with 1,300 annual members usually. And most of these were people who gave us 50 euros when we used to get 3 euros in the same situation. Of course, like bike shops, they got issues with the administrative aspect of the system, even when doing everything right, because there were being non-for-profit, there are kind of exceptions compared to the bike shops. Some shops decided to do repairs for members instead of keeping on with the DIY initial model. So this is not many workshops, but one workshop in Lyon did this, for instance. Some workshops started taking appointments so that they could moderate the flow of people coming in, and some workshops started hiring more employees. So many different attitudes were found after were created by the adaptation to this subsidy. So that's it for community workshops. I would like to end this little overview with a conversation I had with a man who basically realized, thanks to the coup de pouce, that he could earn a living wage with bicycle repair. And thanks to this subsidy, he got more customers. And thanks to the online platform, he got more visibility as he was starting. He started repairing bicycles in a friend's garage and then on a public square right by his flat. He's now considering setting up an official business even after the coup de pouce ends. So for him, this has been a space, a time for testing new ways of working, of communicating, checking up whether he was able to do that before actually setting up his business and use a bike trailer and go repair bikes in people's houses. Another person I interviewed, who is part of the Eurocyclage network, said that she also thought the smallest shops and organizations, those that do not have the choice to do it. That's why more bike shops dropped out of the platform than community workshops, is that the smaller organizations were benefiting more from this scheme. To conclude, the coup de pouce vélo transformed the way bicycle repair and maintenance happens in France. It contributed to the legitimacy of community workshops in the French ecosystem of bicycle repair. It supported the most fragile repair organizations in recovering from the health crisis losses, and it transformed the way some bicycle shops and community workshops operate. And we could say maybe it's contributed to institutionalize some of them. It raised awareness on bicycle repair and maintenance in media and for cyclists, as well as for policymakers, which to me is one of the main effects. So thank you very much. I have in the next page a little overview of some of the media coverage of this scheme, which maybe could be of some interest to you. And that's it. Thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any insights or comments on all this.